Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us. I know Sarah and I are both very happy to be joining you today to talk about a topic that we're very, very passionate about, and that's helping people post-stroke put an action plan together for their immediate recovery and long-term recovery as well. So today's discussion will be talking about a lot of different strategies to help you from the point of view of an occupational therapist, which is Sarah, and an exercise professional, which I'll be discussing. So, let's see. There we go. So it is Stroke Awareness Month. That's part of the reason why we decided to make today's discussion in the month of May here. And we really want to just bring as much advocacy as we can to help our stroke community here in Chicago and virtually to give you guys better resources on how we can live better post-stroke. So last week, actually, Sarah and I and some of our team members from Movement Revolution did the Cycle Nation Chicago bike ride for Stroke Awareness Month in Chicago with the American Heart Association, which was amazing. It raised a lot of money for the American Heart, American Stroke Association to hopefully provide better resources for our stroke community. So if you guys are interested in that event, I hope to do it again next year. It is downtown Chicago, but it was a great event. Definitely recommend it.
We had a lot of fun. We learned how to dance on the bike. It was pretty cool.
A lot of multitasking on the bike, which I didn't know you could do. So I learned a few things as well. But let's get into some introductions here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Johnson from Movement Revolution. I started the organization back in 2013 after working at a rehab hospital for a number of years. I'm really focused on, from day one of my career, I've been focused on helping those impacted by neurological conditions, including post-stroke recovery. And it's one of my passions. I've worked with a lot of people recovering from stroke over the course of my career. And really a firm believer. I've kind of devoted my career toward exercise. So after physical therapy and occupational therapy are over, or maybe in conjunction with those therapies, as hopefully most of you know, exercise and continued exercise is so important. And that's really what we're devoted to here at Movement Revolution. So that's just a little bit of background on myself and what our mission here at Movement Revolution is to empower people with neurological conditions to live stronger each and every day. I think the big key component there is every day, stronger every day, not just at your workout session, not just at your therapy session, but really how can we help you function, feel, and move better each and every day. And that's really understanding and getting to know a lot of the things that Sarah's going to talk about from a functional perspective, what those demands are, and then how do we design exercise programs that really enhance those things. So that's really kind of the whole mission behind what we're going to be talking about today. Is how do you apply some of these really functional skills that Sarah is very knowledgeable in, and also blend that in with an exercise program. So go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. And so, yeah, my name is Sarah Zira. As Eric said, I'm an occupational therapist. I started my career working in a nursing home and very quickly realized that working with folks that have had a stroke was really my passion. And I ended up transitioning, moving to Chicago. I worked at the rehab hospital here in Chicago for many years. And what I really realized was that rehab is great. It's such an important part of the stroke recovery process, but it's not the end all be all. And I'm sure that's something that you all at this point in your recovery know. I always say it's great that you can fry an egg and you can get dressed, but now what do you do? And so that's really why I created Moxie OT. It takes a lot of moxie to recover from a stroke. And my practice is really focused on helping folks get back to those things in the community or those things with their families or work that they really bring meaning to their lives. And I kind of skipped over the question I always like to ask the group. What do you think of as what is OT? And I know we kind of asked for questions later, but does anybody think of OT as just the hand therapy kind of thing or the upper body kind of thing? hopefully you were thinking, no, I don't think that sounds right. Because I always like to define OT as helping people do the things they need to do and want to do. And so the great thing about sort of this post-rehab occupational therapy is let's get into, I've taken folks to play tennis. I've worked on knitting or playing with grandkids or whatever those things are that bring meaning to your life. So yeah, that's more than you need to know about me. Oops, I can't advance the slides. And so that was also getting into our mission at Moxie OT, right? We're dedicated to promoting individuals' abilities to live those meaningful lives. Okay. And so, in OT, we use that word occupation to mean the activities that we do every day. And sometimes I think it can feel like OT is just activities therapy, right? But those activities that we're working on are the things that we want to do every day, right? They're the things that bring meaning to our lives. And so they also help us develop our identity and our, right? So what's the first question? We typically meet somebody that we don't know, right? What do you do? Or what do you do with your time? They're important for developing those roles and routines, right? How do you fill that day? And they bring us satisfaction. And actually, the most important part probably for this presentation is that the research shows that participating in those everyday activities leads to more recovery after stroke. And so sometimes I see folks get in sort of a wheel of once I can walk, once my arm gets better, I can get back to life. But we really need to flip the switch on that. I need to start participating in my life and my body will follow. Next slide. So you all are probably familiar with the typical rehab journey, right? Likely if you've had a stroke, you were in the hospital for that stroke, and hopefully you got a little bit of therapy, OT, PT, or speech right there while you were in the acute care hospital. And then likely you went to some sort of inpatient rehab, whether that was an inpatient rehab hospital or whether you went to a long-term care facility, but you got hopefully some kind of an intensive therapy where you got OT, PT, maybe speech several hours a day. Here in Chicago, we're super fortunate to have day rehab. So many folks have probably experienced that. It's a form of intensive outpatient rehab, right? Where you're going for 3 to 6 hours a day and you're getting to sleep in your own bed at night and hopefully starting to think about how do I get back into my life now that I'm home from the hospital, I can get dressed, but how do I get out and about in my life? And then some folks may have gone from day rehab to outpatient rehab. Some people might have gone right from inpatient rehab to outpatient, but that's a less intensive level of therapy. It's usually 45 minutes, a couple days a week. They're often focused on maybe just 1 or 2 skills or components. And often you're only getting one kind of therapy at that time. And now, I'm guessing because you're on this Zoom meeting with us, you're sort of in this different phase where you're looking at what are community-based services that I can use to continue my stroke recovery journey. And now you can really focus on getting back into your life and not just on that those specific rehab goals or those specific body impairments. And so that's really kind of what Movement Revolution and Moxie OT are here to be parts of that team to help you continue your recovery. And at Moxie OT, we come to your home. So we're really focused on what you do, where you do them. And as Eric was saying, Movement Revolution is really focused on you being able to be strong and exercise throughout your life. And I'll get into it a little bit more, but I think that we're sort of a perfect pair together. So what does that look like? What are these home and community-based services, or what does come next typically after that kind of linear rehab journey. Go ahead, Eric. So, you know, often in the hospital, you were, or even in outpatient rehab, you were sort of given a team, right? Here's your doctor, here's your nurse, here's your therapist. These are the folks that are going to help you. But now that you're maybe discharged from rehab, or you're participating more in the community, you have the opportunity to kind of build your expert care team, right? And so that might be community-based therapists like me, your exercise specialists like Eric. It's also your friends and your family, or other community support groups. Some of you might be participants in a stroke support group, your doctors, your case managers. So making sure that you've got folks that are supportive behind you to help you continue on your recovery. Is there anything you wanted to add so far, Eric?
Guess I have to unmute myself first. Yes, so I think the thing that I like to always discuss when it comes to building this care team is that, you know, even going through the stroke recovery process, you know, there are different phases of that continuum that Sarah just discussed, and a lot of these members of your care team are going to kind of come in and out at different moments of your life, right? I mean, I think a lot of times we'll see folks in like the post-acute stages of stroke, like within the first year. But then we also see folks that are continuing to recover from their stroke 6, 7, 8 years down the road. And I think that there's always times to check back in with occupational therapy or physical therapy that, you know, I think when we are working in this community setting, you know, we have a great window into helping you kind of identify when those times might be. So it's really important that we all communicate and work together in that sense to make sure that we're identifying things before they become bigger things that we might need to address in certain situations, whether that's talking to a social worker or some speech therapy or just day-to-day stuff around the house, like Sarah said, for OT. So I think that's just the big thing, is making sure you're establishing this team. And I think resources like Sarah and myself, we have a good, you know, foundation of some different folks we like to work with here in the Chicagoland area, but finding that advocate for yourself to make sure that you can get those resources necessary, I think it's really important.
Thank you so much, Eric. I think that's a really good point. Of the coming in and out, right? Like we can always kind of address a goal, and then you can work on that, and we can come back in later if you have a new goal.
For sure.
Yeah, and so I think that what's important also to kind of know about, you know, community-based services, and I just wanted to share with you a little bit more about Moxie OT's approach, is that often in rehab, like your goals are sort of created for you, right? The therapists sort of have a set number of things they want to make sure you can do to be safe at home before you discharge. They want to make sure you can get dressed. They want to make sure your family knows how to help you. Like I said, maybe some basic cooking skills. And now you're the driver. You get to be the decider on what your goals are. I have a lot of tools to help people think about what their goals might be. But in the end, it's going to be a collaborative process where you're going to get to really choose what you want to work on in OT. And in my practice, we are all about function. We're all about not just exercise. I think that this is sort of the point in the journey, right? Where I can hand that exercise piece over to Eric, but we're all about problem solving and working together to help you do those everyday tasks or those meaningful activities in your day that make your day a better day. Go ahead, Eric. And so this is kind of what I was saying, is that I just feel like OT and exercise specialists like Movement Revolution are such a perfect fit, because I can be working with you on strategies to help you do the things you want to do, while Eric can be working with you to make sure that you are strong enough, you have the activity tolerance, you have the balance to continue to do those activities, and to help you come up with a program to help you to be able to do those activities for over time, right? That maintenance program. Anything else you want to add there, Eric?
I mean, I think the one thing is, yeah, I mean, we are so, this is why like working with OT and exercise, like those two things just fit really well together, because I think a lot of times people don't think of OT as these functional kind of day-to-day activities, when in reality, like that's really what it is. And I think, it's so important to kind of meld those two things together and identify what these goal setting strategies are, and the day-to-day planning of your day-to-day life. I mean, I think that's one thing that OT can help with too, right, Sarah?
Mhm.
And I think the more we know about those things, what those functional goals are, we try to make that exercise as functional as possible so that it translates really well to whatever your goals are, in some of your other therapies. So I think it is a great combination.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to that coming up with your great team, right? Because then I can let Eric know, with your permission, this is what we're working on in OT, and he can design your exercise program around that. So
For sure.
that's great. And so today, what I really wanted to share with you was some very specific tools that you can use today to, work towards some of those goals you might have in your stroke recovery. And so I kind of called this slide "Returning to Life," right? Because what I really don't, what I get so concerned about when I see some folks in this sort of cycle of really working on improving their impairments, they miss that opportunity to get back into their life and enjoy their life. I have a gentleman right now who's been hanging out for 3 years, but now he's going to his son's volleyball games and he's getting back into life. And that's been such a joy to see. And so the way that we do that is by, well, and I guess I want to talk about this picture too, because I love this winding road, because I'm sure as you've experienced, the road to recovery is not a straight line, right? There's lots of different things. We could just get busy. We could get busy with life, right? Maybe we have other family things we need to manage and we're not able to work on our home exercise program. We might have some medical complications. We might just fall off the wagon, right? Like sometimes that happens. It happens with all of us, with our fitness and our diet, and with our home exercise programs. And so this is just, I feel like a nice image to think of, well, I'm still moving forward, even if it's not in that straight line. But the tools we're going to talk about today are specifically some tools for setting goals, breaking those down into achievable goals, and then creating a very specific action plan so that we're taking steps towards those goals. Next slide, please. Okay. So setting goals is such an important part of the recovery process. It can be really kind of easy to know, I want to get back to the way I was, or I want to, live my life. But if we don't get a little bit more specific, then we can't create that roadmap of where to go. It's also incredibly motivating to set goals. There's lots of research that shows just by setting that intention of a goal, people are more likely to progress in their rehab journey. So goal setting is really important. Some of the tools I like to use for sometimes, maybe we haven't thought about it in a while, or because other people have told us our goals for so long, can be hard to know what those are. So sometimes I like to think about, well, what did I used to do? What did I used to do for fun? Or what did my day used to look like? And think about, what am I doing now? Are there things I am doing, but I would like them to be easier, or I would like to do them more often or with less time, and sort of mull on those a little bit and select a goal for something that you would like to improve on or return to. And so just some of the ideas that, other folks have used. Maybe you want to be able to walk a mile or a block, right? Or walk daily. Some people want to get back to biking. Some people loved cooking and they want to get back to it. I always love when someone wants to work on playing with their grandkids or caring for their own kids. Some people would like to get into volunteering. Fishing is a favorite of mine. Maybe you have a card group you want to get back to, or some other social activity. Or maybe you just want to make a plan to exercise more. Maybe you want to work on your strengthening twice a week. So these are just a few ideas of things that could be your goals. So I hope that they're kind of sort of stimulating your brain for what goal you might want to set, because you're going to have a chance to do that later today. So, you know, kind of let that percolate a little bit. And something I forgot to say at the top is we are going to, if you're able, write these down today. So if you do have a pen and paper handy, if you want to get one while I'm still talking, that would be great. And if you can't write, that's okay. We can just talk about them. All right, next slide. Okay. So once you've thought of that goal, that sort of pie in the sky goal, then it's really important to break that down. And you might have heard your therapists talk about long-term goals and short-term goals, right? But how it's, you know, I love the marathoner example, right? If I decide I'm going to run a marathon, and if I went out there and tried that this afternoon, I am not going to meet that goal, right? Because I have not broken down those steps of slowly increasing my mileage. So that goes for any goal, right? And so what we like to think about is like, what are the steps that we need to take? Maybe if you want to get back to biking, your first step is you're going to look for an adaptive biking program in your area. Maybe if you want to get back to fishing, your first step is actually, well, I need to, you know, refamiliarize myself with my fishing pole and make sure I can use that. All right, next slide. So this is an example of how we break that down, right? So my goal is I want to get back to fishing. And then my first step I decided was I need to learn how to use my fishing pole again. Well, I'm going to try to brainstorm some strategies, come up with more than one of how I might learn to use my pole again, right? It's important that we give ourselves that space to come up with more than one idea, because sometimes our first one seems like the best, but it's not. And when we sort of start to throw out more ideas, a really great one will pop up, right? Or we'll have other options if that one didn't work. So I could get out my old pole and I could practice with it. I could buy a new pole. Maybe that's, you know, maybe I need something that is, you know, better technology than my old one that's 20 years old and dusty in the garage. Or maybe I want to find out about adapted poles and ones that can assist me if I don't have enough grip in my hand. And then I want to choose one of those that I can work on this week, right? So I decided I'm going to find out about adapted fishing poles. All right, Eric, next slide. And then the tool I really wanted to share with you today is something, it's the name of our group today, right? Having an action plan. And so this is actually a specific tool with a lot of research behind it to help folks achieve their goals. And so this is really, we're thinking about what can I do in 1 week that is achievable? And to kind of step away from the fishing pole example for a minute, one of my absolute favorite examples is I was working with a woman in a group similar to this who knew she wanted to renovate her bathroom. She knew that was an important thing that she needed to do. But she lived in a condo building, and the thought of like figuring out how to deal with contractors and the condo association and kind of those added factors when you're sharing a space really felt overwhelming. But she remembered that her neighbor had renovated their bathroom, you know, a few months ago. And so her action plan for that week was, I'm going to talk to my neighbor and find out how they managed all of those things. So that was like an excellent example of a first step that you could achieve in 1 week. Because I got to tell you, renovating the bathroom sounds like one of the most overwhelming tasks I could think of. So kind of coming back to our fishing example, in our action plan, we're going to remember our goal is returning to fishing. That's our long-term goal. And so what are we going to do this week? We're going to find out about adapted fishing poles. Oh, I see a typo on my slide. I'm sorry, but how much are you going to do it? Right? So I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day after breakfast each day this week, working, researching what are these adapted fishing poles, what's available to me. When are you going to do it? I'm going to do it after breakfast, I already said. And then how many days a week are you going to do it? And you can see here that first I said 5. I'm like really motivated to reach this goal. I'm definitely going to do it every day after breakfast this week. Well, another really important thing about action plans is making sure that we're confident that we can achieve them. And knowing that my day gets pretty busy sometimes, knowing that sometimes maybe I sleep a little late and breakfast is late and then I got to get off to my appointments. Maybe it's not every day that I'm going to be able to do it, but I'm sure I can get it in 3 days this week. So I ended up changing my action plan from 5 days to 3 days in a week. So that's our sort of take home from OT today. We're going to get a chance at the end for you to write your own goal and your own action plan. So I'm going to let Eric kind of take it away from here.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so we're gonna kind of divert our attention a little bit now, talking about all these goals, and then kind of convert that to what do we do from an exercise perspective? Like, what are our goals? What are we looking to get from that exercise program in general? And then we're gonna kind of pull this all together at the end, like Sarah said, and put together have you guys practice putting together these goals, because I think those functional goals are very, very important. A lot of these same principles can be applied over to exercise related goals as well. Talking about not thinking about the finish line on the marathon, but talking about how do we get that first mile down, and I think that that's really important when looking at starting an exercise program or modifying an exercise program that you're currently doing. We want to identify the key components, what goes into that first. And I think that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And we'll do a little bit of demonstration as well. We can't just sit here and not move for the next 30 minutes. So those of you who know me know I got to get you moving. So I will definitely do that today. But I think the first thing I want to discuss is just like what are our goals for a stroke exercise program? And I think a lot of times, our clients coming in, depending on where they are, I mean, we want to improve and optimize gait whenever possible. We want to improve and optimize your ability to stand whenever possible, right? Because that allows us to do a lot of other things very functionally, like Sarah said. And if those are difficult things that are a challenge for you now, we want to try to make those as efficient as possible. Above all else, we want to improve balance, right? And by doing that, we will talk about how we do that by building strength, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but primarily to prevent falls. And when we're talking about building strength, we want to do that functionally, and we'll discuss how we do that as well. But I think building aerobic capacity or endurance, is really, really important post-stroke for a myriad of reasons. But energy conservation throughout the day is one of the key components. I mean, there's a lot of research looking at the energy consumption of someone post-stroke versus someone who has not suffered a stroke. And that energy demand for you to move your body the same way you did previously is going to be heightened. So we want to make sure that we're going to be working on building some aerobic endurance and aerobic capacity as you're exercising as well. Quick second. Okay. As we look to build those components of an aerobic exercise program, memory and cognition come right along with a lot of the benefits of exercise that we receive with a sound and consistent exercise program. So that's always something we want to address on as well. Executive functioning and enhancing memory and cognition, especially as we age and get a little bit older. Those are things that a lot of our clients are very cognizant and aware of that they want to improve upon. So that can be an added bonus to being more active. And above all else, we want to prevent subsequent stroke recurrences as much as humanly possible, right? I want to say, there's a high percentage of folks who've suffered one stroke within 2 years. There's a chance that a heightened chance that you could have an additional stroke. We want to prevent that at all costs. And exercise has been proven to be one of the most effective components to helping prevent that subsequent stroke. Like we said before, kind of therapy only takes you so far, and that's why it's really important to continue to exercise even after that therapy is over. And I think that we didn't touch a whole lot on this before, but I think me as an exercise professional and our team here at Movement, as neuro exercise specialists, we're very, very focused on exercise. But we know that all these other components of your health are really, really integral components into helping you build that exercise routine better, or those functional goals better. So we want to assess and address, how is your social and emotional well-being, and how social are you out in that community, and how can we enhance that as much as possible? How can we get you in touch with people that can help you be more effective and efficient with that, whether that's a communication standpoint, from a speech therapist, or maybe some anxiety and depression about going out in the community, and that can be a licensed clinical social worker. So we want to, again, network you with those people in your care team to help address a lot of these other factors. Sleep disturbances is the way that you recover at night, is sleep, and the way that your brain processes all the information and all the exercise and all the therapy you do throughout the day, it all gets processed in the brain at night. And I think a lot of those benefits, if our sleep is disrupted throughout the day, it's really important to seek someone who specializes in sleep to help you kind of manage those sleep cycles a little bit better. I don't think it's something that's discussed enough. And the benefits of quality sleep and how that can change how you function and feel throughout the day. It certainly impacts how you exercise. If someone comes in a little sluggish to their workout one day, my first question is, how did you sleep last night? So that's a really key component as well. And finally, diet and nutrition. There's a litany of research and years of talking about healthy plates, right? And how important that is. But there's even more research coming out now about the impact that the food we take into our body has on our gut microbiome, our inflammation within our body. I am not a dietitian or a nutritionist. However, I think that it's really important to understand how the fuel we take into our body impacts how your body feels, how it can affect aches and pains in your body, and also how that can affect your exercise, especially when recovering post-stroke and the energy demands are a little bit higher. We want to make sure we're filling our bodies with the proper nutrients to help you build strength and build that endurance as best we can. So I have 3 small children at home, and they demanded that I keep this slide in my presentation and find as many brain exercise pictures as I could find. So that is what this is. We're going to be talking about how we exercise, not just for our bodies, but for our brains. And we want to talk about how exercise can impact the neurology and the synapses and the neurons within your brain to help you recover better. And all of the different modes of exercise we'll talk about today: strength training, stretching, mobility, meditation, and aerobic exercise as well. And I think some of the most researched exercise on stroke recovery in particular, and the benefits of it, is on aerobic endurance exercise. Those of you who've been through inpatient, outpatient therapies, I'm sure they had you walking a lot, and they did that 6-minute walk test a lot. And that's looking at your ability to cover ground in a certain distance, right? So we're essentially looking at your ability to, what is your gait speed like? And one of the biggest factors in enhancing ability to walk post-stroke has been, looking at walking. If you want to walk better, you have to walk more. And it all comes down to this neuroplastic effect that movement and exercise has in our body. Our brains are very powerful. It's a very powerful thing, and it really impacts everything that you do. And if you guys aren't familiar with the term neuroplasticity, it's essentially your brain's ability to rewire signals. So think of it as like I'm driving in and out of the city these days. If there's construction on one street and if you have it in your Google Maps and it's saying, I usually go down this road to that road to get onto I-94. Well, if there's construction or an accident or a roadblock, we have to find an alternative route, right? And so when you suffered a stroke, certain areas of the brain have been damaged, and we need to find alternative routes to regain function or to optimize function in a different way. And exercise and intensive exercise has been really shown to be very beneficial at helping us reroute some of those areas within our brains. So what we want to do in terms of aerobic exercise, and when I talk about aerobic exercise, it's maybe recumbent bicycling, it's using the new step machine, it's walking on the treadmill, it's walking over ground, it's using kind of anything to get your heart rate elevated for a sustained period of time. That's what we kind of deem as aerobic exercise. And what the research shows is that we have to do that consistently and regularly, 5 to 7 days a week. And how hard do we need to be working? Well, our methods here, we call it neuro-intensive exercise for a reason, because all the research shows it has to be rigorous in nature. It has to be intense. And what I mean by that is, there's a few different ways that we look at gauging intensity. Kind of the gold standard way is to track your heart rate. So your target heart rate zones are an ideal way to track how hard your body is actually working. And a lot of times the energy demands, like I said before, post-stroke, they certainly impact your heart rate and how hard your body is moving. If you're on blood pressure medication that a lot of our clients are post-stroke, that affects your heart rate's ability to increase, if you're on a beta blocker, this is not going to be the best way to track your intensity. But I wanted to make sure we covered it, because if you're not on any of those medications, that truly is one of the best ways that we can track it. So when we're looking at gauging intensity, we're looking at a percentage of effort or a percentage of your max heart rate. A lot of research shows if we can work between 70 and 85% of your maximum heart rate for 30 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week, ideally sometimes upwards of 7 days a week, if that intensity is more moderate or lower, that can be neuroprotective, and it can have neuroplastic benefits. There's actually some research that looks at doing a high effort level aerobic exercise session, 20 to 30 minutes prior to doing more skill-based acquisition drills, like you might do an OT or PT. The group that just did those exercises alone without doing aerobic exercise first didn't have the same rate of improvement that those did if they were doing this aerobic exercise ahead of time. So, and I'm talking to some speech therapists that I know, I think they notice a big difference too if we can do some aerobic exercise prior to doing your speech therapy. It has helped tremendously in a lot of different aspects of improving your ability to improve your speech and swallowing. So really important. But in terms of if we can't monitor your heart rate, we're going to want to look at what we call rate of perceived exertion. How hard you feel your body is working when you're exercising. And this goes for aerobic exercise, it goes for strength exercise, it goes for any kind of therapy or exercise that you do. We really want to gauge how hard you're working, right? So are you sweating? Are you breathing heavy? Can you carry a conversation with me as you're doing your exercise? If you can carry that conversation, then you're probably not working quite hard enough. I should be able to tell that you're exercising because you're breathing heavy and you're sweating. But this rate of perceived exertion scale is a scale between 6 and 20. And that kind of represents a typical scale of one's heart rate, or what a heart rate might equate to as you're exercising. So ideally, if we it's kind of an arbitrary scale to think about in your head, but if we can kind of identify 20 as working incredibly hard, my heart can't beat any faster. If I took another step, I might lose my balance. That is a 20. We don't want to be there. We also don't want to be here sitting in your chairs listening to me talk at a level 6, which is very little to no effort at all, right? We're going to increase that RPE here in a minute, but ideally we want to be within that range of 14 to 18 on a scale from 6 to 20. Okay. Different ways you can track this. I mean, you can track it on a scale. You can have, if you have exercise equipment at home, you can type in Google RPE scale, print it out, paste it right there on your cardiovascular equipment, and you can kind of self-gauge where you are as you're exercising. We do that here at the gym, and we also use heart rate monitors to track that intensity as well. I'm going to go through all these different forms of exercise, and then we'll kind of move and put them all together. Strength training exercise. So what do I mean by strength training? It's anything adding resistance to your body to make a change in your muscular strength, right? So post-stroke, obviously, a lot of times our clients will have that hemiparetic side where one side doesn't function and feel as good as the other, right? It's not as strong enough. Maybe that hemiparesis is really inhibiting you from building strength on that one side, or trusting that that leg affected by the stroke. And we really want to make sure that we're finding ways to strengthen that side, to build your confidence up and utilizing that limb, and be able to weight bear and help a lot of those more functional skills like walking or riding a bike or whatever it might be. And there are definitely tools that we can utilize here at the gym and then you guys can find at home to help you achieve a sound strength routine, even if you have a limited grip strength in one side or a limited ability to weight bear on one leg. We want to make sure that we can do whatever we can to set you up to make sure we can maximize the muscle activation. So one of the first things that we try to do is identify what muscles are active, what muscles are underactive, and what are the big muscle groups we can use when we're doing some strength exercises to help hopefully elicit better activation of those muscles that aren't moving as well. So take, for example, if we're, it's hard for you to extend your leg as you're going into a step, right? So your quadriceps might be a little underactive. But your hip flexors are really strong. We're going to try to do some exercises that engage your hip flexors while doing an exercise to hopefully help engage your quadricep muscle to help make the whole functional application of that exercise a little bit stronger. And there are different tools and techniques that we use here at the gym, but things like I said before, you can buy at home that can kind of help strap your hand to a weight, or that can help support and stabilize your body or draw more awareness to a leg that might not be as active as the other. So definitely a lot of tips and tricks that we can utilize to help strengthen the body, but we want to really focus on keeping it as functional as possible. And ideally, we want to do some very devoted strength exercises 2 to 3 days a week. Again, we kind of need that consistency built into the mix. And I want to touch quickly just power versus strength. The difference here being you could be on a leg press machine and you could be pressing out 150 pounds, right, on the leg press machine. But does that strength equate to enough power to get you up and out of your chair independently? Maybe, maybe not, right? And there's a lot of research on fall prevention and actively aging and the importance of having power along with having strength, or maybe more importantly, having enough power with strength. With both of these things, with any kind of strength exercise, is always going to help improve balance. I know it's a lot of times a concern a lot of our clients have some trouble and struggle with is maintaining that balance. And I think a key focus on building strength along with some of that aerobic and walking training is really, really important. And finally, I think one of the most important things that we want to talk about is how do we calm our bodies down, right? I think after recovering from a stroke, you have a lot of therapies. Maybe there's some heightened anxiety and stress behind a lot of things that you're doing or have a difficult time doing throughout the day. And it's really important to find different techniques and tricks to help your body relax and recover after you're done with those therapies for the day, help you sleep better at night. Whether that's a stretching routine or mindfulness and breathing exercises, I don't think it's something that we do enough of in general as a population that I think can really help manage your symptoms a little bit better. So let's move a little bit, shall we? So one of the things I want you guys to do is make sure you have enough space around you to move your bodies in all directions. So rotational, reaching up overhead and down toward the ground. Make sure you have a comfortable seat and a stable chair to work with. So I am not being a very good example here because I have a rolling chair and I do not recommend doing these exercises with a chair that has wheels on it. So please make sure you have a comfortable space here. I can only see a few of you, so be honest with me, and I want everyone to be doing this with me, all right? We're going to go through a couple different things. So I'm going to back my chair up. Let's find just a comfortable stance, kind of right at the edge of your seat, all right? We want a nice big base of support with your feet. Now, if you have a hemiparetic arm and it's hard for you to lift those arms up overhead independently, I do want you to kind of use that strong arm to grasp over the wrist or the fist of that a little bit weaker arm to take all limbs through this range of motion, okay? So let's sit up and down. Let's sit up tall in our chairs, one hand over the other or both hands separate. We're going to reach all the way down to the floor, okay? So you want your arms to be coming between the legs. All right. Ideally, those arms are coming between legs. If you can get any outward pressure on those legs, that's ideal. And then we're gonna slowly rise up and both arms coming straight up overhead. Okay, so I want you to look at those hands as we go up overhead. That side that might be a little bit weaker, might feel a little bit tighter, especially in your biceps. So we really want to press those hands as high as you can toward the sky and try to get your arms right up next to your ears. Okay, now let's come back down. Let's do that again. See if we can get a little bit lower. So this is a good mobility and stretching exercise that I recommend doing throughout the day. And Sarah probably, I hope she agrees with me. As an OT, I think this is probably a pretty good one to do. Let's reach up overhead. Now, as we reach up overhead, I want you to rotate a little bit to your right. Look over that right shoulder and rotate those hands to the right. Come back to the center. And then we're going to rotate to the left. Rotate slightly to the left. That might be a challenge for you to do. And if those arms need to come down here, down to your chest, let's do that now. Arms straight out in front of you. Okay, let's pull the hands in and press all the way out. So pull the hands to the chest, squeeze your shoulder blades together and press. And one thing that, if you guys are interested, I know there's gonna be a survey kind of at the end of the session today. Let's keep going with this motion. We used to teach a class here called Strike, which is a post-stroke group exercise class. And it did a lot of boxing-like motions with either both hands punching out to the front or having one hand to assist. And that's kind of what I want to work on here. So this good range of motion is good to get active extension through those arms, but let's focus on building up some of that power like we talked about before. Okay, so I want you to pull those hands in, squeeze and pinch those shoulder blades back to really emphasize posture. And I want you to punch out as hard as you can. And hold that position for 2 seconds. And then pull it back in, squeeze and pinch. And punch all the way out. Give me a little bit more forward lean here as we're punching out. So we want to work on some of those core muscles as we reach out to the front. Pull it in and punch. Pull in and punch. Give me 3 more of these. Pull in and punch. There's 1. Pull in, say it with me. 2. Pull in and 3. Good. Now pull in. All right. If you guys feel comfortable staying up and out of your chair, I invite you to do so. If you have someone nearby that can help you or you need help, have that person nearby. I'm going to demonstrate. If you don't feel comfortable standing up, you don't have any help, please don't do this exercise. But I want to relate what we just did into a functional stand. All right. It's all about getting your body weight up and out of your chair. Again, we want to work on power, right? So I'm going to have you do that same motion with your arms. You're punching and reaching out to the front, and you should feel the pressure of your body weight pushing through your feet, hopefully equally on the right side and left side. So you're going to pull in, reach out, push the weight into your feet. Just practice that first. So you should feel kind of your butt getting a little bit lighter on that chair. Pull back and press out. Press into those feet. Now this time, let's go ahead and stand up on this one. Okay, so you're going to press out, push through those feet, and pull your hips up nice and tall. Okay, now when you're here, let's reach up overhead. Why not? Okay, let's get nice and tall at the top of that stand. A lot of times, if our body weight's too far forward, or maybe we're really heavy on your heels, you might fall back in that chair. But if we can practice getting tall at the top of every stand, that should help prevent that falling back in the chair. Now coming down, let's reach those hands back out to the front. All right, slowly get more weight into your heels, soft bend in your knees. And I want you to sit down as slowly as you can. No flopping in the chair. Sit down nice and slow until you get back into that seat. Okay, so we're building power as you stand up. It's a high effort to really power up. And then as we come down, we're building strength by going as slow as possible. That's called time on tension. That's what helps build the strength in our legs. So as you're here, I want you to be, let's power up one more time. Okay, so let's get the hands up tall. Punch those hands forward. Get your body weight forward and stand up nice and tall. Okay, arms reach up overhead. And then come back down out in front. Now, as you go down, before you have a seat, find how much weight you have in your right foot versus your left foot. And I just realized I didn't unshare my screen. You guys probably can't see me all that well, but you're following along nicely. Okay, so I want you to reach those hands out front, equal pressure right side and left side, and sit down as slowly as you can. One side might be a little more challenging, but I challenge you to load that side as much as possible. Okay? Nice job. So that's just an idea of like how we equate a punch and an upper body exercise into a full stand. And that's just one functional skill that we work on in a group setting. What time have we got here? I know I'm running a little bit late. Let's stop there for now. An idea of how we might take that into a big group class. Like instead of just punching out to the front, we're gonna punch to the side and rotate and down to the ground and back up and press and add some kicks into the mix as well. So those are all different opportunities to help us build strength and also build cardiovascular endurance. And I think I like to end on one more different thing that I want to practice a breathing exercise that hopefully you guys can take with you today. Okay. Again, I think it's one thing that we don't discuss enough, that after a hard workout or a stressful day, this is one thing you can do before you go to bed at night. And if you guys have done breathing exercises before, this might be really familiar, but I want you to find a comfortable seated position in your chair. Maybe your back is up against the back of the chair. And I want you to, we're going to do an inhale for 5 seconds. And then we're going to do an exhale for 5 seconds. If you don't last the whole time, that's okay. But the goal being to take a nice slow inhale breath through your nose for 5 seconds. And then out through your mouth for 5 seconds. Okay. So you can close your eyes if you want to. I will kind of talk us through this. Okay, all right. So let's take a big deep breath in through your nose. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Deep breath in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little slower here. Inhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice job. You can open your eyes back up. All right. That's just a great way to can help slow your respiratory rate down. Focus on taking all that oxygen and air in through your lungs and expelling it out. So, gosh, I planned for more than I had thought today, Sarah. Let's get into some of this goal setting strategies. I think the one thing I'd like to finish this with is if you are planning to start an exercise routine or modify your exercise routine, the biggest thing that I recommend doing is set up an evaluation with someone who is skilled and trained in neurological based exercise to go through an evaluation first. We need to make sure that we are, assessing all the things we need to make sure that we can be as successful as possible, identifying where some of your imbalances might lie in your gait mechanics or your posture or whatever it might be, and to really address that the best we can with an exercise program. So get that evaluation first. All right, take it away, Sarah.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. I love the deep breaths. It's one of those things I sort of forget sometimes, and it's always amazing how much better I feel after. And I think I talked a little too much at the top, so I'm sorry
you're okay.
Got cut off.
If you guys don't mind staying a little bit longer, we'll take it past the hour.
Yeah. So just let's move on. Let's go. Let's take action. So hopefully Eric's discussion of some of, I loved all of the health and wellness things he talked about beyond just exercise, but sleep and nutrition and cognition. So hopefully our discussion today has helped you think about some goals you might like to set. So if you've got a pen and paper, if you want to write down what your goal is, what your first step might be towards that goal, right? We want to break that down into something that's achievable. And then this is the challenging part, right? What are 3 ways I could work towards that goal this week? I don't have to do all 3. I just want to brainstorm 3 things that might help me work towards that goal. And I am gonna go through a little bit faster than I would like to. I'd like to give you time to brainstorm. But once you've done that brainstorm, you're gonna pick one of those, right? And then we'll go ahead and skip ahead, Eric. So once you've picked that one, oh man, I really, I think I thought I updated these slides and they didn't update the way I thought they did. So once you've thought of your achievable goal for this week, then we're going to create that action plan, right? So would anyone mind sharing what their achievable goal for this week is, or maybe your long-term and your short-term goal?
Long-term is biking.
Love it. And I know I didn't give you much time to think, Christopher, but did you think of any achievable goals for this week?
I've always got goals every week, so I don't know. For the for the biking.
So are you biking currently?
No, I haven't been able to bike since my stroke, so a little over 4 years. But I just found, while we were talking about it, I just found there's an adaptive biking resource in Chicago. Unfortunately, it's in the city, but it's not, I just glanced at it. It looks like there's some resources that might be able to help me there. I've already looked at an adaptive bike. Well, not an adaptive bike, but an adaptive pedal for the bike that'll help with my right leg.
Mhm.
It would be probably better off on a recumbent trike for me, but I haven't actually gone to go look at it yet. But I think it's something that I need to check out. That's about 3 hours from our house, so I got to find a way up there. But I also have found there's like adaptive resources for anything you want to do. It's amazing how many groups are out there. And I've shared a lot of them with Matt over at Movement Revolution too, as I find them too, because it's some really great stuff. So don't think you can't.
Thank you so much for that, Christopher. And that's another reason why I love these groups, right? Because we get to share those resources with each other. And I'm going to get into more opportunities for sharing in a minute. But I'm just gonna spitball off of your goal for a minute. So there's lots of could be short-term goals for this week, right? Could be I find a way to get down to that resource in Chicago. Could be now that I know that there's adapted biking, I look for something closer to home. Could be maybe if you're very confident about that pedal, you decide to order that this week, right? There's lots of steps that you could choose to be your step for this week. And then you're gonna, choose that step. You're gonna decide how much you're going to do that. If it's research, am I going to do that 3 days this week, like I said, for the fishing pole? Or are you going to, just 1 day a week to go down to Chicago is probably plenty, right? So you're gonna decide how much. When, right? I think setting that time and day is really important because otherwise there's always time tomorrow, right? So I'm going to go on Saturday. I know traffic's going to be terrible, but I have the time or whatever's going to work for you. And then again, how many days, right? So if I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day researching, then I'm going to do that 3 times this week. Or maybe once you get back to biking, right? I'm going to bike 3 days. So that's an example. I hope folks are jotting down their ideas for their action plans. I think for time constraints, we'll just move past that. And then the other really important piece with action plans is making sure, remember I said you need to be confident that this is something that you can do this week, right? So it might be, I'm not confident that I'm going to make it down to Chicago. So I'm more confident that I'll be able to look up resources in the suburbs, right? So that might be an idea of how I might change my plan. Or it might be that I changed my plan, right, from doing something 5 times to 3 times, right? And that made me more confident that that would be achievable. Lots of different ways to adapt your plan, but we want to make sure that you can rate your confidence at least 7 out of 10 that you can do that. Okay. This is not about the pie in the sky goal where it feels like a 1 out of 10, right? This is about what can I do this week? Go ahead, Eric. And then typically in a group like this, we would share out what our action plan is so that we can hold each other accountable, right? And come back the next week and share that. So since we don't have time to do that today, what I do want you to do is take a few minutes after this class and write your action plan down. And then I want you to share that with either someone in your home or email or call a friend and let them know that I'm going to do this. And I just want you to know so you can check in on me next week and make sure that I did it. But speaking things out loud, that's actually how I made it to grad school. I just kept speaking it out loud to people so that they would hold me accountable. Go ahead, Eric. And I'll share my email again on a later slide, but if you want me to hold you accountable, then please feel free to email me and let me know how you're doing with your goal. Okay, next slide. So this is what Eric was saying with there's a survey at the end. We would love to provide more wellness classes. We would love to do like a 4 to 6 week more structured class where we can dive deeper into a lot of the topics we talked about today. And again, share resources with each other, create those action plans and hold each other accountable for them and help each other problem solve through them, right? Today was just a breeze through. We would love to help you really develop that and then check in and see how it went the next week, right? So if you're interested in something like that, there's the QR code there. You can, if you're on your computer, you can hold your phone up and use the QR code, or I'm gonna drop that link in the chat because I think that's easier to click on. I'm trying to, I can't grab the link all of a sudden. There we go. Okay. And let us know that that's something that you'd be interested in, and we will reach out to you as we plan future events. And then just thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming today and participating. If anyone has more questions, please drop them in the chat, or you can see Eric and I have our contact information there, so you can always reach out to us and ask any questions you have, or let us know about other programming you might like to see. But this was a blast, and I'm so appreciative you all came today.
Sarah, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for this joint discussion. I think it's always great to collaborate with the great clinicians we have in the Chicagoland area. And if you're not in the Chicagoland area and you're on this call, there's probably some virtual services we can help you out with as well. So happy to do that. But yeah, like Sarah said, we're really excited to see what additional resources what action steps we can take for our stroke community here to help you guys can continue to evolve your recovery process. And that's what we're all very passionate about. And hopefully you guys took a little bit of information about how to goal set, how to get more active throughout your process, and hopefully we can help. So yeah, here that is our, I think that's the last slide here.
Yep, the last one.
So any questions from anyone in the group that they wanted to either unmute themselves and ask, or type in the chat?
Or feel free to share your goal. My last person was canceled, so I'm here to listen, Eric, if you need to run out. I'd love to know what folks' goals were.
What's RPE?